Good afternoon to those of you who've joined us so far. Um, my name is Julian. I'm going to be the moderator for this session. You may be hearing a bit from me before 5 o'clock, but after that, I'm going to largely leave it to our speakers. We will start at 5. We're waiting for some more people to join, and we're a few minutes early just yet, so please bear with us. I think still waiting for some people to join, but I think we should start. We have a limited amount of time, so let's get on. My name is Julian. I'm the head of Reef Malaysia, and I'll be moderating this webinar this afternoon. So welcome everybody to this webinar, which is a side event of the United Nations Ocean Conference, which is currently going on in Nice, France. I will be brief with introductions and so on, because I always like to let people have as much time as possible to raise questions and make comments and so on. So hopefully you won't be hearing me too much. Our topic today concerns the role of local communities in marine protected area management. The goal of the session is to try and see if we can't unpack some best practices, some ideas, some thoughts that we can all take away with us. While the role of Indigenous people and local communities is increasingly recognised as an important element of equitable and successful protected area management, there are many models for that participation, and we have representatives from 4 countries to talk about that. But we're going to look at it from 3 different perspectives. What are the policy and legal issues? What legislation regulations are needed? What needs to be in place? The second one is science. Does the research support the idea of community participation? And finally, the community themselves. What do they see their role as? How do they see their capacity building needs and so on? And what we were trying to do is to come sort of to develop some sort of consensus on best practices in community-based resource management. So we have 4 distinguished speakers today. I'm not going to go into long biographies, that's already been circulated, but we have Dr. Wichin from Ramkhamhaeng University in Thailand. We have Dr. Hai who is a consultant for an organization called Pacific Environment in Vietnam. We have Dr. Mike Achagenio, who is a professor of marine scientists at the University of Philippines Marine Sciences Institute. And we have my own colleague Nadira from Reef, Malaysia, who is our program manager in Kota Kinabalu in Sabah. So how this is going to work is I'll ask each speaker to speak for just 2 minutes on each topic, giving their current experience and thinking and best practice in their own country. Once all 4 people have spoken, 1 or 2 questions from the audience. Once all 3 topics have been covered, we'll open the floor to questions, and I hope we're going to have a good 15 or 20 minutes for that if we all keep to time. There's only 1 bit of housekeeping. The Q&A will be open throughout the webinar, as will the chat. Individual panelists may respond to questions directly, or we may take them into the more open forum. So, without further ado, let's move on to the first perspective, which is going to be science. Next, but we didn't use that one, so we'll skip straight on to the first, the slide number 3, the science and policy, the science slide. And I'm going to ask Wichin from Thailand to kick the ball off and tell us about the science perspective from Thailand's perspective. Wichin.
Okay, thank you, Julian, and hello. My name is Wichin. I'm just going to respond to Julian's asks about the community-based management of marine and coastal resources in Thailand in science perspective. So this kind of thing has been emerged in 20 years. It responds to the challenges such as the overexploitation of natural resources, particularly fishery resources, and the degradation of marine and coastal ecosystem, conflicts among different resource users, and climate change impacts. In general, the main objective of community-based initiative in Thailand are to keep sustainable use of resource and make local livelihood sustainable, right? Your right-hand side of the diagram on your right-hand side shows some key topics that are relevant to community-based management objective in Thailand. In general, the community-based management starts with the stakeholder analysis and engagement, which is the key step to include not just community members, but also other key stakeholders such as resource user, administrator, and manager. Stakeholder engagement process enable collaborative identification of problems, and they also enhance planning and decision making. And then they come up with the practical solution to solve the problems. For example, in many areas, local community and stakeholders agree to set regulations, create zoning for conservation purpose, and also sustainable use of marine and coastal resources. Most studies also indicate that that low environmental perception knowledge as well as our financial constraint could be a major challenges in conducting community-based management in Thailand. Yeah, that's all for Thailand perspective. Julian, back to you.
Thanks very much, Richin. Just a question: your own research that you're engaged in, are you working on research to support community engagement? And there are published papers on this topic, right, which says communities should be involved, right?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, let's go to Dr. Hai from Vietnam to tell us about this perspective from Vietnam's position. Dr. Hai.
Yes, okay, thank you, Julian. Hello, everyone. Yes, as you know, the coastal community plays an important role in the marine conservation and the protection of aquatic resources because they have a life closely linked to the marine resources through the fishing and aquaculture activity. And they have a very good understanding of the characteristic of the marine resources where they live. And they are the beneficiary and also directly the affected of marine resources are the depleted. And they have enough force to participate in protecting the marine resources. That is why they have placed an important role in the marine conservation. But however, they also face a certain limitation, like the insufficient awareness of the marine conservation. They also lack of the conservation skill and knowledge and conflict with of the interests with the coastal community, and they lack of the financial resources. That is the coastal community in the marine conservation in Vietnam. Thank you.
Thanks, Hai. Yeah, I think we all lack financial resources for the work that we want to do. Okay. Philippines, Mike, what's the perspective from the Philippines?
Just for context, the Philippines is an archipelagic nation. Our dependence on the marine resources is very high for livelihood and sustenance. And we believe that there is an inadequacy of traditional systems of centralized government management for marine protected areas in the country. And there is greater efficiency in planning and implementation, which is done at the local level. And this is also a way of democratization of the access to resources by involving the community themselves. And then there's a greater success because there's greater compliance, especially when the laws are being promulgated at the local level compared to national laws. And the process of establishment of MPAs in the country involves community mobilization. So we usually employ some community organizers to talk to the community about the project. And then we also embark on IEC, or environmental education and capacity building. And the planning is participatory. And we also provide, if need be, some support for livelihood. And then there is also participatory research and or monitoring activities with the community themselves. And we network, usually one MPA, we network with other MPAs. In fact, we established a platform for collaboration and working together. We call it the MPA Support Network. Thank you.
Mike, I want to ask you about that monitoring and research, but we'll finish off the presentations first. Nadira, would you like to go through the Malaysian kind of perspective on whether or not research supports the need for community participation?
Yes. Hi, thank you, Julian. Okay, so there's a number of research that backs up or support the involvement of the local communities and management of MPAs worldwide, including Malaysia. So firstly, community participation in NPA management ensures inclusive decision making. So based on a study by Rahman et al., we conducted this study in Peninsula Malaysia. Engaging the local communities as direct users of the marine resources could create a sense of belonging and responsibilities, which would assist not only in the effective management of the NPAs, but also from the early stage of designating such NPAs as well. So additionally, community-based marine managed area, this also ensures recognition of traditional rights. So this can include respecting their customary rights to access and use marine resources, their traditional knowledge of marine ecosystems, and their cultural practices related to the sea. This also ensures their identity as fishermen are protected. So some of the local communities I engaged with on Mantanui Island are very proud of their identities as fishermen, and this is actually one of the concerns when it comes to the establishment of marine protected area within the area. Thank you.
So directly reporting some research there. Okay, so that's the end of the first little session. I'm going to see if anybody has any questions in the Q&A box yet. I suppose I should have looked already, but I didn't. Stephanie making the point that coastal communities play a pivotal role. However, behavioral change of local community is a great challenge. Okay, what's the view of the panelists? What can be done? I'm going to pick on Mike and ask him for his comments on that first. I'm going to ask Mike first. Behavioral challenge of local communities is a great, behavioral change is a great challenge. What's your view, Mike?
Yeah, that's why it's very important to employ community organizing and do some education campaign with the community, because just to get the social and political buy-in, and also to address some violations, and to appreciate what we're doing, the establishment of marine protected areas, just to demonstrate to them that the benefits actually is for them. That's we improve their fisheries, for example, and others ecological services by having MPAs in their area.
I know that Nadira is going to agree with this question because she mentioned the work we've been doing on Mantanani. So I won't ask her, but Wichin, coastal communities behavioral change. What's your view on that?
Yeah, I think this is the challenge that happens all over the world. But the thing is that I think the change, the behavioral change is related to the perception and their understanding, right? And I think if we give them opportunity to learn and to understand what's going on, what is the impact of something, so that and in someday, I think they are going to, just like they are going to accept that kind of things. When they realize that if they don't do that things, they are going to impact their livelihood. This is the thing that it could take time, I think, but it's worthwhile to pay much effort on that.
Okay, all right, thank you, Mike. Stephanie, I hope that's at least got partway to answering your question. Okay, I'm going to move on. Please, let's have some more questions because there are people here who've got some experience, so let's try and use that. We're going to look at this from the policy/legal perspective now. So we're looking at what policy and legislation is in place, what's required, and what sort of gaps there might be in this perspective. So I'm going to ask Hai from Vietnam first to speak about his thoughts on whether or not we have adequate policy and legal support for community-based management. Hai.
Okay. Yes, as you know, Vietnam have made many efforts to improve the legal frameworks related to the community in marine conservation. As you know, we have a national law and a policy. That we have the law on fishery and law on biodiversity and Vietnam maritime law. Then we have some decrees, circular decision and NBSAP. And we also have a directive and project and program. It's a very big program and very big. The government project for the conservation, yes, for the marine conservation and related to the community. And another thing that we have the international policy, like Vietnam ratified the agreement relating to the implementation of the part 11 of the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea in 2006. And Vietnam also ratified the conservation and management of the straddling the fish stock and highly migratory the fish stock in the 2018. And also Vietnam cites the marine biodiversity in area based on the national territorial edition BBNJ in the 2023. Also, Vietnam announced and committed to the biodiversity protection at the COP15 and is implementing the GBF goals. That is the Vietnam efforts. Thank you.
Hi, is there something in those national laws and policies that specifically say local communities should be engaged in management? I know the international ones say that. Just what about the national laws and policies? Is there a specific inclusion of local communities in there?
Yes, as you know, for the international policy, so Vietnam, we have the NBSAP already have an NBSAP.
Okay,
so now the
yeah.
NBSAP, so now the NBSAP now review and revise aligns with the GBF. In
Okay,
NBSAP, we mentioned the community, the engagement in the marine conservation.
Okay, thank you. I want to clarify that because it's the same here, but there are still some gaps. Okay, thanks, Hai. Wee Chin, what's the situation with Thailand?
Okay, thank you, Julian. For Thailand, the policy and management of marine and coastal resources are quite dynamic and influenced by both international and national policy. Particularly the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework and the Sustainable Development Goals, which are the framework that we use to develop our other national policies, such as the Thailand's 20 years national strategy. But to me, community-based management has improved a lot compared with that in the past, because the development of the public participation process in Thailand, we have Decentralization Acts almost 25 years ago, which is an important legislation that devolving power from the central government to the local administrative organization. Since then, several government agencies have improved their governing policy to move toward co-management by integrating the bottom-up process into the traditional top-down one. And the relevant acts enable local community to have important role in planning and decision-making process. And as we can see that there are some activities that just like a public hearing on the designation of the MPA or environmental impact assessment process. However, there are still some questions about the quality of the public participation process, and also the stakeholder representation in the process, whether they are all stakeholders are included or not. Yeah, this is I think this is the main gap of the local participation in Thailand. Thanks, Julian.
Thanks for pointing out the gap. We'll be talking a bit more. Let's now move on to Nadira from Malaysia. Can you give us the situation on legal policy perspective from Malaysia?
Okay. Thanks, Julian. So just like Thailand, Malaysia is also signatories to both Sustainable Development Goals and the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, which we have integrated into our own national policy called the Malaysian National Policy on Biological Diversity, where Goal 1 itself and the Target 2 is on strengthening the roles of IPLC, civil society, private sector, academia in biodiversity conservation. But when it comes to national laws in Malaysia, we have no specific laws to establish a marine managed area that is fully managed by the local communities themselves. So far, the ones we have are managed under broader frameworks. For example, through the Fisheries Act, which is on the federal level, we have the Reef Care Program, which is an initiative by BOF. Previously, it was a previous program launched in early 2020. So it's designed to give some responsibility to some community groups, but no legal authority to conduct reef conservation programs in Peninsula Malaysia. Another example, through the Sabah Parks Enactment, which is a Sabah state law, so which enables the local communities to be part of the parks enforcement team by being formally appointed as honorary park rangers. So the Selakan Marine Conservation Group, or SMCGs, who are based within the Tun Sakaran Marine Park in Semporna, Sabah, are one of the most recently appointed as honorary park rangers by Sabah Parks. And they have been actively patrolling their area and deterring IUU fishing and even enforcing some of the park regulations. So that's from Malaysia.
Yeah, the Reef Care program is something that we're involved in, and it's been a really good program, but there's no legal support for it, as you said. Finally, on this section, Mike, tell us about the legal policy aspects from Philippines' point of view.
Yeah, Philippines is a democratic country, and we have democracy in abundance, I guess, compared to other countries. And communities are very much involved in the resource management. And we have enabling laws that are in existence. We have, for example, the local government codes that mandates the protection of 15% of the municipal waters. So that's where actually the communities and their local government units are working together to protect the marine resources in their area. We also have the National Integrated Protected Area System, which is actually managed by the national government, yet you can see that in the process of establishment of protected areas in the country, although they are managed nationally, there is also that involvement of the community. They are represented, for example, in the Park Management Board. And other relevant laws, we have the Wildlife Conservation Acts, we have Indigenous Peoples Rights Act, and even our environmental impact system. We have that in the country. And then we also have some policies like the Philippine Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan, and also the Philippine Development Plan and other relevant policies. And we also embrace international laws where we are a signatory. For example, the Global Biodiversity Framework, the latest one, the Kunming-Montreal GBF, and the Sustainable Development Goals, and even the ICES Treaty. We are already a signatory, but it has yet to be ratified by our Senate.
Thanks, Mike. So that's for the legal part. I'm just looking at some of the questions in here. If you will forgive me, it's quite complicated to follow the two things. But this first one caught my eye. In your opinion, so it's from Zam, Which approach is more effective for marine park management? A centralized government-led model or a privatized community-driven model? Hi, how does that work in Vietnam? Can you shed some light on this question for us?
Yes. Actually, in Vietnam, we have two models. The first one is the marine protected area. It belongs to the government. The government will separate the two government. The government is the central government and provincial government. And we have another one that is the aquatic resources protection area. That is they belong to the community. So it is a very small one. It's not very big like the MPA. So now I think the aquatic resource protection area, it will have a very good practical and effective, because the community join with the co-management. So I think that is a very good model in Vietnam now. So we will continue to develop the model. Yeah, in future. Yeah.
Right. There are some more questions there, but they very much are related to the community part of this. So I'm going to hold those questions until we've just gone through this last session on the community perspective of resource management. Communities, what is their role? How do they see their role? I think is very important from us. What capacity building needs are there? How do we fund it? What's the legal protection and so on? So I'm going to ask Malaysia, I'm going to ask Nadira to kick off for Malaysia. What's community's role, Nadira?
Right. When it comes to Malaysia, so currently we do not have any marine managed area that is fully run or managed by the communities themselves. But we are moving from a formally top-down approach in managing and establishing MPAs to a more consultative and participatory approach to management of MPAs. A good example is the Tun Mustafa Park in Sabah. So it's one of the earliest multi-use zone type of MPA compared to the earlier traditional types of MPA we have in Malaysia, the fully no-take zone MPA. So the park is co-managed between Sabah Parks, which is a government agency, and WWF Malaysia, the non-government organization. And we also have multiple local community groups who are involved in conducting patrolling, enforcement, and conservation programs within the park. For example, the Bangi Coral Conservation Society and the Kudat Turtle Conservation Society. The nearby TMP as well, we have the Barungus Marine Managed Area. So it is designated as an OECM. I know you don't like this, Julian, but they are considered an OECM guided by the community protocol, which is endorsed by the Pitas District Office and the Sabah Native Court. So this effort is facilitated by WWF Malaysia and supported by Department of Fisheries Sabah. Another example of effort that Reef Malaysia itself is facilitating is empowering and strengthening the capacity of local communities through our community marine conservation groups, the CMCGs. So while we are striving to institutionalize the CMCGs, we have been actively training local community champions, encouraging them to take lead in doing marine conservation activities. So for now, we have 7 CMCGs in Malaysia and 3 in Peninsula and 4 in Sabah. So far, for the CMCGs we have in Semporna, they have been actively conducting a lot of marine conservation programs. Currently, several of them, including my colleague Azmin, they are doing crown of thorns cleanup in the east coast of Sabah, where they involve multiple CMCGs from 4 islands. From Mabul, they have a representative from Larapan Island, from Selaka. So all of them are trained to conduct these kind of activities in marine protected areas and also outside as well. Yeah.
There's no legislation in Malaysia, you said in the previous section, and yet we are still doing all of this sort of stuff informally. So the question would be, how do we formalize all of that? But I'll ask that later on during the Q&A session. Hi, give us the perspective on the community perspective from Vietnam.
Yes, as you know, yes, the objective to improve conservation efficiency. I think community should be the participate in the step of the established MPA and aquatic resource protection area. The first one and the second one is the government should have a water the surface assigned to the community for management, and the community participates in the discussion measure to effectively manage and protect aquatic resources, and they should receive training to improve capacity and receive the financial support to maintain activity to protect, conserve, and regenerate resources, and let them combine with the ecotourism to the sustainably exploit the resources, creating the sustainable financial resources. That is, I think, that is suggest for the community in future. Thank you.
Hi. Wee Chin, tell us about community perspective from Thailand. How are they engaged there?
Okay, as I mentioned before, local community plays an important role in the management of marine and coastal resources. And due to that, we have decentralization acts. So we have local administration such as municipality, sub-district administrative organizations, where elected community members can be involved in the council, and they have more power to manage coastal resources in their area. In the management of national park, there are two bodies. The first one, we have the protected area committees, and the second one we have just like marine park volunteer networks. The two bodies have been established to engage local community and local stakeholders in marine park management. For the Department of Marine and Coastal Resources, they also engage a local community and stakeholders along the coast of Thailand through the establishment of marine ranger networks to facilitate the department's implementations. And the Department of Fisheries also apply co-management approach to promote community-based fishery management by connecting fishing communities and local stakeholders as well to manage fishery resources. Both departments also established the provincial level committees that they can just like consider local regulations and policy. Also, the academic institution and the NGO also play a significant role in providing technical and financial support through the community-based research and conservation initiatives. In my experience, I think in most cases, various study shows that insufficient financial support, low local perception often leads to discontinuity and the failure of the community-based initiative. For that matter, I think we have to think of the sustainable financing along giving them with the knowledge and understandings for increase the perception for the success of long-term community-based initiatives. Yeah, thank you, Julian.
I think that goes back to one of Mike's early comments about using local community mobilizers so that people know just what it is, the benefits they're going to get, so that they can be convinced of the need to engage. So it's a two-way process. But let's thanks. Let's off. Last but not least, Mike, community participation, their roles, and so on from the Philippines perspective.
I guess we have the most number of locally managed NPAs where community are involved, enter into eco-management arrangements with the local government units. And this is possible because the local governments are empowered to establish NPAs through ordinance or passing a municipal ordinance. And usually we monitor the effectiveness of MPAs. We are using a tool, we call it MEET. And this is also a participatory tool where the community themselves are involved in the assessment. And as you can see, we have established even a database which you can access actually online. And you can visit our database. You just type in Philippine MPA database and you can see all the MPAs that we have in the country, the locally managed as well as the nationally managed. But the locally managed outnumbered the nationally managed by a ratio of 1:200 or more. And and still we're faced with some issues or challenges. For example, if you go, there are only 50% of our MPAs out of the 2000s, which are, we call it functional, and the rest are paper parks. So these are, these MPAs, the non-functional ones, are faced with issues on leadership skills, the lack of leadership skills, and then there's a weak enforcement still, and education and information campaigns and advocacy work in the area is still very weak, and they are faced with problems with sustainable financing, as well as they don't have the capacity to conduct ecological monitoring for their MPAs. Back to you, Julian.
That's Mike. It just got a little bit choppy there towards the end of what you were saying. Let me just check something with you. You mentioned earlier on about local government mandates to protect marine areas. I think you said the local government unit is mandated to protect 15% of its marine area. Is that right?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. That's very interesting. Okay, so if it can be said, that's come to the end of the formal session here. That's all of the presentation bit out of the way. From me, it seems there's a lot of there's a lot of agreement on the science, on the research. Nadira even quotes some papers that there is a lot of evidence that communities really do need to be engaged in management. And I'm banging that drum because for me, we can do more of that in Malaysia. So if the research is supporting it, then it gives us a solid base for making these suggestions. The legal and policy was interesting. Everybody's kind of more or less on the same page there. Everybody's looking at the same international agreements, the Global Biodiversity Framework and the same Sustainable Development Goals and so on. But there does seem to be a bit of variety in the local legal and policy space. The greatest variety is in the community perspective. I mean, in Philippines, it's devolved right down to local government level. Malaysia seems to be a bit more based at the with Thailand perhaps sitting somewhere in the middle. So that will be my very quick summary, but let's not listen to me. And see if we can't fire some questions at you guys. There was one particular comment which I'm going to throw first at Wee Chin. Somebody's saying where's it gone? Thailand. It's inspiring to see that you have an OECM roadmap. Could you share more about that process, how that process looks like, and how communities are able to participate? Wee Chin.
Okay. For the OECM, for now we have a clear roadmap, right? From the 2023 to the 2030. Our government has paid a lot of attention on that with the hope to contribute to the 30 by 30 targets. So we have just like the first 2 years we're doing the setting the criteria and site assessment, right? And now we have that one already. And now we are just like trying to find what mechanism should be to do the recognition process, to do the monitoring and evaluations, and also I think they are going to just like to have a platform and a start for OECM registration next year or next 2 years. And by the end of 2030, they are going to assess the area of OECM that they will be designated whether they are qualified or not, right? This is the whole process of the OECM roadmap in Thailand. Yeah.
Destructive fishing methods. I'm going to ask Nadira and Hai about this. Nadira, first of all, destructive methods of fishing by coastal fishing communities still persistent around Sabah and Sulu waters. To what extent are the communities assisting to overcome the issue? May you want to speak about what's happening in Salakan?
Yes. So a good example for this is the Selakan Marine Conservation Group itself. They are actually a community that lives within a marine park, and they have been legally given the power to do enforcement and to actually chase away all these fish mamas away from within their areas. So this one is using the Sabah Parks enactment. And then based on, I think last year, 2023 or 2024, we did a workshop to gather a lot of the local communities, local coastal communities all around Sabah. There's about 17 community groups within Sabah that have conducted several marine conservation efforts, including trying to deter fish bombing activities within the area for Sabah waters.
So they're definitely assisting.
Yes.
That's one part of the question. Are they resolving the issue?
For some areas, yes, but since they are not really formally recognized, except for maybe Salakan area, so this is one of the issues that is how do we say, one of the gap or the weakness when it comes to a conservation effort that is led by the communities.
Our experience in Mantanani, if I can just jump in here, where it was a fish bombing hotspot, but that has declined, and one of the factors that's contributed to that has been the growth in the homestays market. So there's been a shift in livelihoods, and they don't need to go fish bombing anymore because they're earning better livelihoods from tourism. Yes. Anyway, Hai, the second bit. Vietnam's still on the yellow list on EU compliance. I guess they're talking about fish bombing. To what extent are local fishers assisting to overcome the problems?
Yes, as you know, in Vietnam, when we established the MPA, so it impact to the fishermen. That is a very common everywhere. So I think now that we have developed some model, the combine within the MPA activity with some community activity. So they combine, for example, the Cù Lao Chàm island MPA in Vietnam. They combine between the ecotourism for the fishermen, and fishermen can get the income. Yeah, I think that is suitable for the model in Vietnam now. But most of the MPA in Vietnam, and so I think the sustainable financial is a big problem, and change the livelihood for the fishermen is a big problem now.
You touched on another question there, Hai, which I'm going to ask the others about because you've just answered it for Vietnam. Are there any examples where tourism has been positively worked into community-based management of their reefs, for instance? Mike, I know that there are many small MPAs, community-run MPAs in Philippines. Has tourism been a part of developing those or making them a success?
Yes,
Hi.
there are a couple of MPAs that are very successful in the Philippines because there are ecotourism opportunities. But the problem with ecotourism is you cannot develop ecotourism for all the sites. So you'll be spreading the benefit from ecotourism thinly if all these MPAs have an ecotourism activity. And the other is the government has to invest also on the other requirement or requisite for an ecotourism to take place. For example, good airports, good roads, and other facilities. So there are only a handful of all these sites that have those opportunities, and they happen to be in the right place where ecotourism can be developed as one of those strategies for you know um, sustainable financing for the area.
Thanks, Mike. Which is this a thing in Thailand? Do you have a lot of people looking at tourism or ecotourism within as a way to strengthen MPAs?
Yes, because I think marine tourism is related to the MPA and even the ecosystem that located outside the MPA, where the community can be engaged as additional income for them. For example, there are many community that runs the ecotourism business in their community in the form of community cooperatives or business enterprises. So they just like they form the fishers, right? Small scale fishers, and then during the peak season, they take tourists to dive to do recreational fishing, or to just like sailing along the mangrove for sightseeing. That is the thing that just like that makes some additional income for the local livelihood, and they are happy with that kind of a thing as well, right? That I think there are many cases in Thailand that shows that the interrelated between the conservation as well as the use of biodiversity as a tourism sector.
Is there, and again, I'm reading questions from the chat and the Q&A now, again. Is the ecotourism part of the alternative livelihood of communities? Or how big a part is it? How is ecotourism managed? Is there any intervention from government in terms of financing, funding? Nadiro, do you consider the homestays on Mantanali to be a form of ecotourism, or are there any other examples in Malaysia about ecotourism being part of alternative livelihoods?
Yes, one good example also within to Mustafa Park that I can think of is a community of the Kampung Malubang Pitas. So they are actually a community that is actually in Tun Mustafa Park, but the zone is excluded. So the area it's managed by the community themselves, where they have started a community-based tourism activities around the area. So the attraction is the Pitas Coral Bar, and besides that, they are also involved in so the community group themselves are also involved in conducting reef restoration programs around their community as well.
But somebody's asking, in a decentralized management model, how do you get funding and buy-in for capacity building? How do you sustain those individual or those local units so there is sufficient as possible? Again, I'm going to go to the other guys. Mike, funding, you've mentioned it already, but you've got small community-led MPAs. Where does their money come from? How do you sustain them for training and so on?
Those are well-managed MPAs. They usually get financial support from their local government units. So when their local government units allocate funding for the management of their MPAs, then that's good. But that's not across the country. So there are also LGUs that do not prioritize MPA management. So, but there are NGOs and POs all over the countries that have the capacity to fundraise money. So there's a external support for the management of MPAs, but they are not usually sustainable. So once the NGOs pull out from the site, then they go back to zero. So there is no financial sustainability. But if there are like opportunities for tourism, so we mentioned that, and then some sites are able to sustain the management of their MPs. But as I said, there are only a handful of MPs in the countries which are located at the right place, where there are good roads, good airports, good ports, and other facilities which can develop ecotourism as one of those um, revenue generating activities for their MPAs.
Wichin, what about Thailand? How are the smaller MPAs there funded? How do they get money for capacity building?
For the for the MPA, they got some funding from the governments, right? Some part from the entrance fee that the tourists pay, and the second one, if the MPA, no, if the area that are located outside the MPA, they would have some funding from other sources, like private sectors, companies doing some CSR project, NGO, or even the scholars that doing some research on that area. In some area, they got some collaborations between stakeholders in that area, and they have some funding, and they raise some funding from other source as well to run community-based activities, right?
Hi, you mentioned earlier on Kulacham and the funding of the tourism aspects there. People are asking about whether or not ecotourism benefits are spread out. Mike already mentioned that you can't have ecotourism everywhere because it would be too thinly spread. Tell us a little bit more, Hai, about the ecotourism in Vietnam. Is it a good model for funding MPAs, community-based MPAs?
Yes, in Vietnam, we separate the MPA in the coastal and MPA the offshore. With the offshore, it's not easy to combine with the ecotourism. So the government have to fund for the MPA in the offshore. And in coastal, like the Cù Lao Cham, I think the funds from the ecotourism they combine with the MPA, so they get the tickets from the tourists, and they have some service like the boat travel from the inland to the Cù Lao Cham, or something like that. I think that the budget, that the financial enough for the support for the MPA activity. That's in Vietnam. It's not only Cù Lao Cham, it is a good model in Vietnam now.
I'm just going to just throw in one answer myself. One of the questions was about whether or not Malaysia has signed the High Seas Treaty or the BBNJ Treaty. The answer is not yet, but it is my understanding that Malaysia will soon sign the treaty. Well, it's not confirmed, but this is what I've heard speaking to a few people around here. So I hope that answers that little question. We have 5 minutes left. I'll just do a couple more. One here saying, excuse me, roughly 15 years ago, Taiwan implemented marine education to educate citizens on this matter 15 years ago. The question is, do you have such initiatives for your country? And if yes, what is the impact? I'll start with Wichin, Thailand. What's your marine education programs like there for general citizens, just the general public?
General public, I think the Department of Marine and Coastal Resources have done a lot about that. They do the public activities to give some knowledge to tourists, to youth, to general people to understand more the ecosystem, marine ecosystem. And other department, just like the Department of National Park, Wildlife and Plant Conservation, also have this kind of thing within their activities. The Department of Fisheries also have such kind of activities that are trying to just like provide some knowledge for fishers to just like to take care of their resources. Yeah.
To highlight to the other countries momentarily, but there's one here about the Thai constitutional law provides specific provisions on the mandatory participation of stakeholders and communities in all environmental issues. A long statement there. So the Thai constitutional law provides specific provisions for inclusion of stakeholders. Can the panelists highlight on the status of other sites? It's a very quick review back, go back to the legal question, but Mike, there is provision for mandatory participation of stakeholders in Philippines? Or not?
Yes, as I mentioned, we have various laws in intercountry, and even our national integrated protected area system. There is a provision there that involves the community participation in the management of MPAs, and even our local government code. There is also provision in there, and even in our constitution, there is a provision for the involvement of the community and civil society in managing our natural resources.
Thanks, Mike. Hi, is there provision in Vietnamese law on the mandatory participation of stakeholders and communities in environmental issues?
Yes, in Vietnam, we have some decree, law and decree, the regulation about the stakeholder in the management marine aquatic resources, like the provincial authority, community, and sometimes we have the private sector and the public sector also involved with the community and manage marine conservation in MBA.
Last question, I'm going to ask that of Nadira. Is there mandatory participation of stakeholders in Malaysia?
As far as I know, there's none that is mandatory, but we do have some laws and policies a bit fragmented that encourages local stakeholders to be part of such initiatives.
That was perhaps a bit heavy-handed way to finish, but that was the point I was trying to make. Everybody's got the research to support community-based community participation. The laws and policies are there to support community participation, but the practice is what differs across the countries. We're not going to have a chance to write down some best practices today because we've come to the end. I'm wrapping up, but I think there's a lot to follow up on that particular issue. So very quickly, we have all of the questions, we have all of the chats. I'll try and distribute those around the speakers, and if they can take a bit of time to respond to some of them, then we will do our best to do that. As you know, everybody's busy. It suffices for me to say thank you to our speakers, our panel, my good friends Mike, Wichin and Hai, and also my colleague Nadira. But I speak with Mike and Wichin and Hai on a bi-weekly basis. We work together on various things. So thank you for giving us an hour of your time this evening. Thank you to everybody else who joined us this evening for your questions and your chat comments. And I will draw this to a close. If anybody wants to get in touch with us, there's a little QR code there. You can connect with us. If you want to come through us to the other guys, I can pass on your emails. But that's it for today. Thank you very much for your participation.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.